Hey folks, James Hilliard back with you. Thanks for joining our Hangout series here, part of Innovation for the Nation. I hope also between these sessions you've had a chance to check out our sponsor booths. Of course, the Google booth has all sorts of white papers, case studies, other information that you can access. Also Xerox, SATA Systems, Cloud Sherpas, Emergent 360, Pondera Solutions as well. Their booths are available to you, so hopefully you have a chance to step in those virtually and get some more information from our sponsors. We appreciate them being on board here. We're moving into session 3 of today's Hangout series, so I do invite you to stay here with us now, visit those booths between sessions. But this session is off the grid, going offline with Google Maps and Earth. Almost all of our sessions that we've talked about in the last 2 days have had some component where we've mentioned integration with Google Maps. Yesterday we had several sessions showing some very clear kind of online capabilities. But what we're going to do for the next 20 minutes here, some slides and a live demo with Sean Madej, product manager for Google's Geo team. And we're going to be talking about the scenario of what happens, how can you still use powerful tool like Google Maps in a situation where you don't have network access. One of the first things that comes to mind is in a disaster type scenario. Networks can be affected. You don't have access to a tool that, again, many of us have probably come to just take for granted. I know I use Maps if I'm out of town. I'm using it 3, 4, 5 times a day. If I'm local, I still am using it typically once or twice a day, possibly on my phone or at home, either going somewhere, just trying to get an idea of a vicinity I'm going to. But again, when we don't have that, how do we access a powerful tool? That's what Sean's going to share with us today. The team there has been working on that capability for us, for governments as well. So Sean, appreciate you taking time, sir. Let me turn things your way.
Thanks, James. Really appreciate it. So as James mentioned, my name is Sean Madej. I have the great privilege of working with an awesome team of engineers here in Mountain View, California, who are working on an interesting set of challenges. And our goal is to take the consumer mapping experience that users are accustomed to with Google Earth and Google Maps and make it available offline. So before we get that, before we get to speaking to that, I just want to baseline it and talk a little bit about this realm of geospatial or geo. Maps have been around a long time. The Babylonians had early clay maps on clay tablets back in 2300 BC, and since then maps have changed. But in general, we use maps as a way to understand the world around us, to understand relationships between place and location. And so as we as a society have become more accustomed to using mobile devices, we have seen the ubiquity of this mapping experience kind of take off, right? It's now omnipresent. As James mentioned, he checks maps several times a day if he's out of the area or in an area that's unfamiliar. I personally use maps constantly. And it's really interesting how this whole field of mapping has become much more accessible from the common person or the layperson. Just a few years ago that maps were really reserved for specialists, cartographers, remote sensing specialists, scientists. But today, I always like to share the anecdote that my mother, who could never set the television VCR when I was growing up, she always just gave up on that. The same woman today, 20 years later, pulls an iPhone out of her pocket and wants to see where the nearest Starbucks is. And I think that really highlights how this field has changed and become so much more accessible. So today, obviously, awesome mapping experiences from Google Maps on many different devices, many different form factors, tablets, desktop, laptops. But as you can imagine, there are use cases, and specifically use cases faced by enterprises and governments and for-profit businesses and the like, where internet connectivity is just unavailable or it's intermittent. So we really see this being applicable, as James mentioned, in disaster response and humanitarian relief type situations, where maybe a tornado has degraded the local communications infrastructure. Perhaps an earthquake has damaged connectivity, and so in that immediate aftermath, as you're trying to take a toll of people and damage, a map can be absolutely vital. But we need to have the flexibility to make those maps available in the absence of connectivity. Another way to kind of look at that is if you don't have connectivity, maybe if you have some connectivity, you also don't necessarily want that fire truck that's speeding to the scene of an incident to be reliant on a 3G or 4G network. As we are all accustomed to, you go through parts of town where that connectivity can be intermittent or hard to get a signal. So there's also these semi-connected use cases where having a map available native on the local device can really be critical. So that's what my team works on here. We have this neat mandate to take Google's consumer mapping experience and make it available offline. So we do that with a product that we call Google Maps Engine Portable. And the goal, again, is just to as closely as possible parallel that online experience. And what we've done is we've been able to build out a platform that currently works on Windows, Mac, Linux, and Android platforms to provide the Google Earth 3D experience and the 2D Google Maps experience for individuals. So to kind of baseline a little more, it's one thing to take Google's mapping data offline, but often organizations and enterprises have data that's unique to their specific areas of practice, right? And so what Google has done, kind of independent of this portable project that we're speaking of, is they've created this platform that I think Dave McCluskey may have talked to you about yesterday if you were able to dial in for his session. But it's a platform we call Google Maps Engine. We at Google have developed this really impressive infrastructure for processing lots of imagery, terrain, and vector data that we publish with Google Earth and Google Maps. But naturally, there's just more data out there than we can truthfully process and publish. And there's going to be data that's unique to particular industries, unique to particular organizations that just may not be of interest to Google's wider audience. So what we've done is we've tried to productize the platform that we use to deliver Google Earth and Google Maps and make it available for organizations and individuals that want to deliver geospatial data. So this platform is called Google Maps Engine. It's cloud-based, meaning it runs out of Google's infrastructure, and it does really impressive things at Google scale with imagery, terrain, and vector data unique to an organization. But once this data is in Google's cloud, we can then use the tools that my team and I are working on, which is to cut out this data as a portable globe or a portable map, a single file, all of your map data. You can pull it out of the cloud, download it to your device. And what's really neat about this arrangement is you get the best of all worlds. That is to say, you get Google's base map tiles, your own base map tiles, maybe some imagery that your organization has collected, or some imagery, overhead imagery that was available from a local government, municipality, and then all of that interesting vector data. By vector data, I mean those points, lines, and polygons we see on top of a map that really add context. But to take all of that data and pull it down, run it from your local device without any connectivity to the outside world is a pretty exciting proposition, and that's what I'm going to demo here for you in just a second. So we try to solve this problem in a very scalable way. What I mean by scalable is a map is something that can be used by an individual, or it can be used by a large group of individuals. And so what we have tried to do is make this platform flexible enough that the map can be served off of a smartphone, it can be served off of a tablet, it could be served off of a laptop, maybe a hardened laptop like a Panasonic Toughbook that a pilot might take in the cockpit of an aircraft, or a utility worker may take out into the field. But also we've tried to, and we've delivered ways for this to be served in a much more enterprise fashion. That is to say, to hundreds or thousands of users behind a firewall on an independent network without any reliance on the open internet. So it's really interesting to try to solve this challenge across all of those different requirements. But what I'm about to show you is kind of what this looks like. So I'll transition here, and I'm going to come over to my desktop. And I will tell you my desktop was artificially clean today. Normally I have lots of icons everywhere, but in anticipation of presenting to you all, I made myself look like an organized individual. So, but here in this Google Earth Portable folder, I can just double-click, and all of my globes and maps are stored in a single directory. And there, again, a map or a collection of geospatial data can be exchanged as a single file format. So you can imagine, in the event of, say, a natural disaster, day one you might have a certain amount of geospatial data. And so we could distribute that one file to all of the first responders or all the search and rescue folks. But as they're out doing what they do, over the course of 12 or 24 hours, naturally we're going to accumulate more geospatial data. Maybe get some fresh satellite or aerial imagery, perhaps get new vector layers that show response zones or which roads are open. And what's unique about this arrangement is that as a team back in an office or in a tactical operations center assembles that next iteration of the map, they can then cut a new version and distribute that back out. So you almost get these snapshots in time, because obviously one benefit of using Google Earth and Google Maps online is the data is living, breathing, it's constantly being improved. But as you can imagine, when you take data offline, it in a way instantly becomes stale. So the nice arrangement with this particular software, this particular solution, is that it can support many different use cases with these iterative or delta type updates as map data changes and evolves. But here I'm just going to double click on my Google Earth portable icon, and in doing so I'm going to launch a user interface that looks and feels just like something online. And that this is intentional. This is meant to feel like the experience you'd have with maps.google.com. And it runs just out of a web browser. But you may notice that this is not running from an HTTP address out on the open internet. It's actually running from a little localhost URL on my own machine. So though I'm viewing this through a web browser, all of the map data I'm about to show you is coming from the local machine here. If we were all in the room together, I'd turn off the internet and show you exactly how this works. But clearly, to share my screen with you and to make this work for our virtual event here, our virtual summit, I'll have to keep the internet on. But what you're seeing here is the polygon I cut. This particular example, I cut all the map data for the San Francisco area, specifically San Francisco County. So you'll notice actually outside of that area, out in Berkeley, you'll notice that that area looks a little pixelated because I don't actually have map data in this particular portable cut for that region. But we can zoom in here and we can look at these tiles, and this looks and feels exactly like the Google Maps experience online. Again, all of this content is being loaded locally from my device. And as James mentioned initially, and I've brought up a couple times now, particularly in a disaster response scenario, this consumer familiarity can be absolutely critical. Because as you can imagine, when lives are at stake, when property has been damaged, it's not the time for individuals to learn new tools. So by using the best of the consumer breed inside of enterprises and inside of organizations, we can really capture that consumer familiarity and make it a force multiplier in a sense, so that your first responders, your field workers can be more productive faster. So some other examples that kind of highlight how you could use some of this map data. For instance, I'll show you this one here. I took all of the Amtrak lines in Florida, and we actually cut these as a route. So what we were able to do is say, around every Amtrak station, I want a 10-mile circle in case I were to get out of a station and walk around. But around the tracks, maybe I just want 2 miles in either direction, just so I kind of get a frame of reference. But short of some sort of train breakdown, I'm not going to be getting out and walking around in the Everglades. And so we'll take another peek at that polygon here, but you can really see where this map data has been cut. And so as we zoom into Tallahassee here, again, all of this map data loaded locally on my machine, but the experience looks and feels like Google Maps. As I zoom in, you'll notice we have all of this rich content down to a very deep zoom level, and we can take advantage of it here for our reference. In addition to what you're seeing here, we can also take the map data and build on top of it. So it's very foundational in a sense. This map data can be incorporated into offline applications for field data collection or applications that your organization needs to fulfill their mission. So a couple demos there, and I'll probably just wrap up with a few slides just to talk about our vision and some of the possibilities for this type of technology. So as I mentioned to you, this is tightly integrated with our Google Maps Engine product offering. What I mean by that is if you have your data in Google's cloud, this is a way that we can give you to take that data, liberate it, take it out, and actually access it in those areas where you may not have connectivity to the outside world. One of our first use cases for portable actually was on the International Space Station. We worked with a team that wanted to provide Google Earth 3D functionality for the astronauts on the space station. And as you can imagine, there are very few places in the universe as bandwidth constrained as the International Space Station. So that was kind of a cool marquee deployment for us. But the concept is that you could just cut this map data in small chunks out of Google Maps Engine. So you might have terabytes, tens of terabytes, hundreds of terabytes of data in Google Maps Engine, but maybe today you just want one particular county or you want one particular driving route. And so we provide tools where you can literally just draw a polygon, decide how deep inside that polygon to cut or what level of detail to extract, and then what level of detail you might want for the rest of the world. And of course, this file could be, several megabytes in size, or it could be many terabytes in size, and it's a very interesting engineering problem to solve. And again, it's an evolving product. We're making some interesting inroads, but just this week we cut a large 6 terabyte portable map, which almost at 6 terabytes is hard to call that portable because there aren't that many hard drives running around that you can just throw that on. But again, lots of interesting use cases and lots of evolving capabilities here. So one other piece just to leave you with, what we really envision for this is the way that this technology could be used in a programmatic, proactive fashion. And what I mean by that is all over the world, alerts are issued by government agencies. And what I mean by alerts are things like in the United States, the National Weather Service or the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration will issue alerts when there's going to be a significant weather event like a tornado or a severe thunderstorm, perhaps even a freeze event in the southern part of the United States can be pretty critical to infrastructure and can cause a lot of headaches. And so in real time, these agencies are out there putting out alerts. On the right side of the screen here, you see the cone of uncertainty that NOAA always releases for their hurricanes. And what's really unique about the platform that the team I get to work with here has built is that we now have ways to programmatically cut portables based on real-time data. What I mean by that is if your county goes under some sort of severe thunderstorm warning, without any human intervention, we can just make sure that the minute that alert is issued, programmatically in the background, map data for that county is being cut, and eventually we want to get to a point where that map data could then be synced out to the mobile devices of first responders so that even if that severe thunderstorm doesn't affect the connectivity in the area or it doesn't degrade the cell phone network, the first responders would still have that data. But in the event that the worst happens and there's no connectivity to the internet, that data would be proactively on their device and ready for them to use to make authoritative decisions and get their jobs done. So lots of interesting capabilities and evolving potential for this, but that's kind of what I wanted to cover today, was talk to you a little bit about portable. So,
Hey, Sean, let me piggyback on that idea you just shared. A vision I have potentially, and maybe your team's thought about this, could there be a case? I was in Denver recently and a tornado hit down on the airport.
Yes.
And we had a shelter in place. I'm a California kid, so usually it's earthquakes that get my attention. But could you see a scenario where a municipality, a government agency, was able to push out something to the public as well that might have a map that says, here are the tornado shelters in a certain region? Is that being done yet? Is that things that you've heard people thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really been one of the primary drivers of that Google Maps Engine platform that we talked about earlier. You know, it's unique that what we do as Google from a mapping perspective, we have millions of users and tens of millions of users who rely on our map data. And we live in an ecosystem where if that map data isn't fast and authoritative, those users can very quickly go somewhere else. And so it behooves us to make sure that our infrastructure serves that data in a fast, reliable way. What that also means is that we have this elastic infrastructure that can handle spikes. And the reason I'm going down this route and telling you that is because interesting things happen. A couple years ago when we put up our Santa tracker, where on the 24th of December children can track Santa around the world, our infrastructure was receiving 1.6 million queries per second as children around the world logged in to see where Santa was. And what's really unique about Google's infrastructure is it elastically handles those surges and then of course the subsequent dips in traffic that are just natural to the world we live in. And that really is important when it comes to disaster response, or for instance, James, to your scenario about the tornado in Denver, because nobody might care about a map of Denver that shows first aid shelters or Red Cross locations today. But after that tornado, hundreds of thousands or even millions of people might instantly want that information. And so So to your point, we've actually partnered with folks all over the world, but most recently in New York City, to make sure that they could use our infrastructure. Oops, and I got another appointment. I'm sorry about that. My calendar jumped in.
Busy guy.
Um, yeah, but again, to your point, to make sure that those maps were available when people needed them, how they needed them.
Let's get away from disasters. Let's be a little more cheery here.
Mhm.
CT's been with us on this event out in Colorado. He brought up an idea of hiking trails, fire roads, stuff like that. Can I also see a scenario that a forestry department or a fish and wildlife or something like that could even provide certain maps, again, for end users ultimately to download if they're going backcountry camping, hiking, where they know service isn't being, you could at a trailhead maybe get a map downloaded, and then you have that in that offline capability.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really this evolving paradigm we see is that um, individuals want to consume data in ways that are familiar to them. And so if they're driving from point A to point B, they're using a Google map or they're using Google Earth. And so I think an evolving area of opportunity is for organizations to adapt the way they deliver their content, whether that's trail maps, perhaps it's tour maps in big cities, but to distribute that via a platform people know and use and can quickly integrate and quickly understand is there's a lot of potential there, and we're keen on trying to answer that market demand.
Dan, bringing up the file size, you mentioned that 6, I believe, terabyte. But what have you heard back? What has your team seen for most applications, especially on that Android device or that portable tablet, something like that? What size do most of these kind of take up?
Yeah, so it really depends on that area of coverage. For instance, the demo I showed of San Francisco County, all of San Francisco County, was only 20 megabytes, so a very reasonable file size. All of the Amtrak routes in Florida, a little bit larger, up to 80 megabytes. And so it really scales. And the nice thing about these tools and the tools that again, this great team of engineers I get to work with is working on, is that we want to give people a very granular ability to decide exactly what map data they want to take with them. And so that they can truly decide, if they only have 2 gigabytes available on their phone, well, here are the constraints they can work in to cut a map that will fit that file size. So.
Makes sense. Hey, CT again out there in Colorado, wondering, are there any programs for first responders to be kind of field testing any of this, or have we moved beyond kind of test phase? What can you talk about that? Are people interested, wanting to try and get this in their hands, use it?
Yeah, it's a great question, and so one of my challenges is now how we get this out there to the world, and we don't currently have a trusted tester or an outreach initiative directly tied to this, but we have a really strong Google outreach team. Specifically in Geo, we have a great outreach team, and we absolutely anticipate providing grants for this sort of technology so that we can get it into the hands of those first responders or those academics or those nonprofits that are doing really interesting things and want to leverage this capability to get their job done. So more to come on that. Again, it's new technology, and we're still trying to figure out exactly the best way to get this into the hands of people all over the world.
We'll come back to the emergency idea in one second here, but a couple other ideas that I'm seeing here. Utility digging. Someone could be out in a area, property lines, right? That could be potentially use cases. I mean, I'm just seeing a lot of ideas flowing through of people saying, hey, could use it for this, could use it for that. All things you've heard.
Absolutely. That field data collection is kind of a big use case that we see, a lot of demand for. And whether that's a researcher who's going out to look at beaver dams along a river, or it could be that utility worker who's going out to survey poles or switching stations. There's this disconnect in a lot of our enterprises where the tools that workers have to do their job haven't kept pace with the power of these smartphones that we have in our pocket. And so really that's what we're kind of keenly focused on, and that's what this great team we have here is working on, is how do we take this consumer technology of Maps and Earth, get it into the hands of those utility workers, those researchers, and all those people who can use this technology to do their job faster, better, smarter, but absolutely.
Larry is looking to kind of push buttons and move this forward, wondering, are there features to the offline map where maybe someone in the field could take a picture, get information, and then kind of sync that back to their offline and or online map experience that they might be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have some initiatives underway to do, to really leverage all the sensors on these phones we carry in our pocket. I happen to carry an iPhone and an Android. And if you think about it, I mean, these things have cameras, they have GPS, they have accelerometers. There's all sorts of interesting data that can be collected. And what we try to do is provide tools, and in some cases APIs, or application programming interfaces, so that data can be synced back up with the cloud, pushed back into Google Maps engine, and then possibly distributed out to other users. Lots of really exciting ways that this can all come together to fit very specific vertical needs.
Sean, I get regular updates to Google Maps on my phone, right? And is that update schedule similar to the base tiles in this offline mode?
Yeah, so that's a great point. Google, one of the hallmarks of Google Maps, right? One of the big kind of market validations for us is that our maps are constantly getting better. And when they aren't right in a particular place, people tell us. And that's one benefit of having the online Google Maps experience, is that when you ask for those directions from the San Francisco airport to downtown San Francisco, we're going to give you the latest and greatest information. We're going to give you the best detour information, the best traffic. One challenge with offline maps, of course, is that when you cut that map and you create that portable size, that file is almost instantly stale. And so, we're looking at interesting ways in the future we can sync data back and forth between the device as connectivity allows. But today it's really just kind of more of draw the polygon, draw the shape you want to extract, take that data with you, and serve it up locally.
A couple questions here we'll get in from Brandon and from Greg. Brandon just kind of giving some more ideas. Mineral and mine inspectors, tobacco license inspectors. I mean, he's just seeing tons of applications out there for this. Brandon, appreciate that. Greg here saying, love the idea of sharing that data. Are there liability concerns if, for example, an underground power line is off a little bit and someone does some digging and it was supposed to be 3 meters over here in that map that was given out, those types of issues?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And that situation, or those challenges, aren't unique to just digital maps, right? For years, paper maps have been inherently inaccurate or slightly off. And I think what's really unique about the current ecosystem we're living in is that our maps are more current and up to date than they ever have been before. And naturally, when an organization goes out, they find out that maybe that power line was 3 feet one way or the other. But the nice thing about the way these tools work is that field worker, right, can make that correction and then federate that correction back out to the entire enterprise, as opposed to in the past where all of this data lived on independent devices, and that worker would go out and dig, and sure enough the line wasn't where it was supposed to be, and they'd eventually find the line and get the job done. But did that data really get back to the authoritative system and make it more accurate? So there's lots of components to that situation, but it's an exciting time to have this technology and to be leveraging this technology inside of enterprises.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, Sean, it's been a good chat here. Appreciate you joining this hangout. Our next hangout, folks, is pretty cool because I think it's going to wrap up a ton of the concepts that we've talked about yesterday and today. There's going to be some mapping in there, some search, the use of Chromebooks. It's going to be traveling down to Georgia, their parole and pardons department, and talking how about they went to basically virtual offices and they were able to cut out a lot of brick and mortar office buildings because of the tools and technologies allowed by the connectivity that we now have, by the tools that Google provides, by the innovative uses that Google's partners and other companies and government agencies that we've heard from have pushed the limits of what this technology can do. So I think that's going to wrap a lot of things up in one great story, and then we're going to have our closing keynote coming up at 1 o'clock Pacific time. You don't want to miss that. That's with Michael Stone, Chief Technology Advocate, Michael Jones, the Chief Technology Advocate for Google, and he's really going to paint a picture of where things are going to go from today. So 2 more great sessions coming up. I encourage you to join us for those. Again, the hashtag to stay in touch with others that have been joining Innovation for the Nation, IFTN13. And with that, we'll wrap up this session. Again, thanks to Sean, and folks, I invite you to join us back here in about a half hour as we look at that virtual office initiative down there in Georgia. All right. Hey, Sean, thank you, sir. That was great.
Yeah, thank you.